So and IAM users are going to have long-term credentials. This thing I forgot to mention this point. Okay. So now today we'll be discussing how IAM is going to work. Okay, as I told, IAM is going to work based on authentication or authorization. What is authentication? What is authentication authorization? Yesterday we discussed, right? Authentication means signing credentials. Whether the user is having username and password, whether his authentication is right or wrong. Then he's going to authorize once he's signing in into the console, whether he's having for what resource, what permission he's going to have. Allow and deny rules. That is nothing but authorization. Okay, and IAM is going to work based on principle, request, authentication, authorization, actions or operations, and resources. Okay, then you think this is the AWS account. You can see this AWS thing, that is AWS account. So principal, we have first, principal is nothing but a user. His credentials is signing in. Then after that, once he's logging to that, he is having authentication. Authentication means that it is verifying whether he's the right user. After that, yeah, it's going to request. What is request means actions and operation and resources and request information. Once request is done, it is going to authorize. Authorization is going to take place. Authorization means what for which policies he is having permissions, for which resources he is having permissions. It is going to authorize. After authorization, it is going to take actions. Actions means now he is having permission for EC2. In EC2, you can go run the instance or start the instance or stop the instance. And IAM service, you can create user, delete user, get user. Then again S3 service, can you create bucket, delete bucket, list bucket. This all the actions you can do. Once action is done, again these are the resources like EC2 service, IAM service, S3 service. So in this way, IAM is working. So you can see what is principal is nothing but a user, as we discussed. And request, when a principal tries to use the AWS management console or AWS API, AWS CLI, principal is sending the request. Principal user is sending the request. I want to log in. Then actions and operations. Actions and operations are principal wants to perform what that user wants to perform once he's logged in. Then resources, for what AWS resources, what actions he can take, what permission he's having, and authentication, signing credentials. Then see here you have principal must be authenticated, sign in AWS using their credentials to send a request to AWS. So to authenticate from the console as a root user, you must sign in with your email address and password, root user. As a IAM user, provide your account ID or alias and then your username and password. We did right now. And to authenticate from API or AWS CLI, you must, if it is CLI, command line interface, you must provide access key and secret key. Okay, if it is command line interface, if it is normal console, you can go with the username and password. But this is if you are going with CLI, command line interface, access key and secret key. So what is access key and secret key? They will ask you in interview questions also. So access key is a string of characters that acts like a username, allowing a user to access the system. It will act like a username, allowing the user to access the system. And secret key on the other hand is a password like string of a character that is used to secure the access. You know, secret is going to secure your access and it will validate the identity of the user. And these keys are generated by the system and are unique for each other. These keys are generated by system. If you go in like right side your name, there you will have security credentials. There down somewhere we can go create access key and secret key. I'll just show how to create that thing. So so these keys are generated by system. We are not going to create access key and secret key and are unique from each other. Both are unique from each other. Access key acts like a username, secret key acts as a string like a password, and they are used together to verify the authenticate of the user and grant access to the system resource and services. Okay, they are going to grant access to the resource and services if you are using login as API or CLI. Clear? So this is actions and operations. As I told, actions and operation is nothing but create user, delete user, what permissions is having, what actions is having to do. Next, resources. Once he is logged in completely, what actions he's having. That is nothing but resources. He have access for AWS EC2 instance or IAM user or S3 bucket. Or in S3 bucket, he is having only read-only access. All the actions, these resources, what actions you're having to what resources. That is nothing but resources. So in all these things, all the step by step, IAM work, it's working like principal, request, authentication, authorizations, actions on operations, and resources. Clear? So this is how IAM works. So next we have policies. So what is policy? Very important. Policies you will definitely get in your interviews. What is a policy? What is types of policies? So your policy is an object in AWS that defines permission. Now, example, I created IAM user as Lee. So I had attached him a policy. What policy? S3 full access. That was a policy. So this policy is an object in AWS that defines permission. What permission this particular user is having. Clear? And you manage access in AWS by creating policies and attaching them to IAM identities like users for groups, users or roles or AWS resources. Okay, to users, user groups, roles, we are attaching all these policies, right? Now example, we did user. Next, AWS evaluates these policies when IAM principal, user or role makes a request. This AWS is going to evaluate these policies when now user is making a request. Now Lee made a request, he logged in, so AWS is going to evaluate what policy this person is having. Next, permission in the policies determine whether request is allowed or denied. So this permission is going to check whether what permission is allowing, it's denying. Example, I attached for Lee S3 full access. It was allowing the policy only for S3, but rest of the it was denying because he didn't have any permission over there. So next, most policies are stored in AWS as JSON document. Okay, it is stored in JavaScript. Okay, so most of the policies will be stored in JSON documents. And AWS supports 6 types of policies. First one is identity based policy, second one is resource based policy, third one is permission boundary, fourth one is organization SCPs and ACLs and session policies. But most important is identity based policy, resource based policy and permission boundary also. These three we are focusing much and will be doing also. But others are I added little additional to just. Okay, what is this identity based policy? So attach, managed and inline policies to IAM identities like users, groups to which user belongs or roles. So identity based policy means, example, I attached to Lee, I attached S3 full access. So that is nothing but identity based policy. Okay, it's identity. This Lee's identity was S3 full access. That is nothing but identity based policy. And identity based policies grant permissions to an identity. What identity what this person is having. Now example, Matthew is having S3 full access. Go to dev app1, he is having S3 full access. Go to Bob, he is having EC2 full access. So what identity he is having. So identity based policies are attached to user group, role. This policy let you specify what the identity can do, its permissions. What is its permissions? Okay, so next, identity based policies are JSON permissions policy documents that control what actions an identity, user, groups of users and roles can perform on which resources, under what conditions. Identity based policies are further classified or categorized to two types. One is AWS managed policy, second is customer managed policy, and third one is inline policy. Okay, so we have identity based policy. In identity based policy, what identity is having, that is nothing but identity based policy. So in that we are categorizing into three types. So one is managed policy. In managed policy we are having three types: AWS managed, customer managed and inline managed. What is AWS managed policy? Everything is taken care by AWS. Say example, S3 full access. So S3 full access, I am going attaching directly to that policy. So he is having everything is taken care by AWS. You are not going to do anything there. So next we have customer managed policy. What is this customer? We are going to customize. Now I gave, instead of giving S3 full access to that person, I'll create S3 read only access. Okay, I can give permission him only to read. I am customizing how I want to that person. I have to give him minimum permission. So I'm customizing it. That is nothing but customer managed policy. So next we have inline policy. Policies that are directly attached to a single user, group or role. Inline policies maintain a strict one-to-one relationship between policy and identity. So example, I have a user like Lee. I will directly attach him one policy. I'm attaching directly. That is one-to-one relationship. I'm attaching him single policy. That is nothing but inline policy. Clear? Clear with these policies?
Single policy means one resource, right?
Yeah, inline policy. Only I'm going directly attaching that person, one-to-one permission. So first one we finished studying identity based policy. Now second one is resource based policy. So what is this resource based policy? So resource based policies are JSON policy documents that you attach to a resource such as Amazon S3 bucket. So now to one person I'm attaching one policy like S3, Amazon S3, EC2. So we are attaching some resources. That is nothing but resource based policy. Okay, these policies grant a specified principal permission to perform specific actions on that resource and defines in a what condition this applies. So resource based policies are inline policies. Okay, they are attached. So resource based policies are JSON policy documents that you attach to a resources. We are attaching to a resource as a Amazon S3 bucket example. Okay, these are resource based policies. So next we have permission boundary. This is sometimes important, you have to know this. So what is this permission boundary? So example, permission boundary is a security feature used to set limits on the permission that can be granted to IAM in the sense identity and access management, user, group or role within an AWS web services account. So this permission boundary is going to provide you additional layer of security. Okay, it provides an additional layer of security and helps to enforce the principle of least privilege, ensuring that IAM entities only have minimum permissions necessary to perform the task. Permission boundary allows administrators to specify the maximum set of permissions that can be granted to an IAM entity, effectively acting as a fence that limits the extent to which an entity can perform actions in AWS account. So set of permissions boundary to control the maximum permissions for this user. You use this advanced feature used to delegate permission management to others. So I'll just show the picture how it's working. I'll just give the scenario. This is IAM group. Okay, you think this is IAM group. I showed you know about groups and users. You think this is a group. Group name is dev group. In dev group, he's having S3 full access. Who is having S3 full access means this Matthew. See, okay, first you see here, I am user. User is Matthew. Okay, user is Matthew and he is having S3 read-only access permission. He is having read-only. He cannot go create nothing. He is having read-only permission. But this same person in the group name is dev group. He is having S3 full access. You're getting the scenario or no? I'll just show you guys. See here, this is a group. Okay, and this is the user. In the user also same person Matthew only. And in the group also, this is a dev group, but same person. In the group also Matthew only. Here this Matthew is having S3 full access. Same person as a user is having S3 read only access. So now what is the overall thing? Is having only S3 read only access or S3 full access?
You have two policies. You have full access, but both also.
So now we can do both also. When he's in the group, they have attached him S3 full access in the group. But when he individual, he's having S3 read only access. So you can see here that top thing. After attaching Matthew to the dev group, permission would be S3 read only plus S3 full access. Now he has complete credential. Full access also he has and S3 read only access also he is having. Now effective permission. So here we have attached him identity based policy like S3 full access. which is based on group level. And when it come to permission boundary, S3 read only access. So next, what is the effective permission means? Is having S3 full access, right? Full access. And here S3 read only access. What is the effective permission means? I am going to give him additional. This is the permission boundary is nothing but it will act as an additional security, right? Now I can restrict him S3 full access using this permission boundary, and I can he will get. You can go to permission boundary. We can go enable there, enable permission boundary. Then he will get access only to S3 read only access. I will go enable what S3 read only access. Then he will give access only to S3 read only access. How? Because of permission boundary. You guys got it or no? You didn't get it. Okay, fine.